This is Saurabh, and you're listening to my favorite talk show, The Weekly Show with Aditya.
Yes, I think he might have enjoyed that. His mate certainly did.
This is episode 200. I repeat, this is episode 200 on the 27th of April 2020. Mark this day in your calendars as the greatest talk show on the planet celebrates 200 episodes. 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, 175, 200. What do all these numbers indicate? For most individuals, it might be just numbers, but to reach 200 episodes in just about 22 months cannot be explained in mere words. Forget 200. Most talk shows don't even reach 50 episodes, or they fall flat after 50 episodes. Often difficult to explain the euphoria behind this because it's not everyone's cup of tea to understand this. Only those who have been a part of this will understand this. Except for the WWE, which has been going on for a quarter of a century and has completed nearly 1500 episodes in that same duration. I don't recall any other talk show or an entertainment based program. Maybe the talk shows that we see, the late night show, the tonight shows, the daily shows, yes, these shows can reach 200 episodes, but those anchors do not operate alone. They have a whole team to assist them in the day-to-day operations of their particular talk show. But when the majority of the operations has to be done on one's own, and 200 episodes is more than just a mere number, more than just a milestone, more than just another speaking session. There are points when you pick up speed, you reach the maximum limit, and it feels you are tiring out. Not for this talk show, not for me. For me, my operations don't get affected with what's happening in the outside world. No lockdown, no lock up can impact this talk show from functioning. And that is why this talk show is now amongst the elite group of each and every talk show. Nor does this talk show need any kind of recognition from any entity because it has been built up on its own. There are no external factors involved in building up this talk show, and I make no bones about that. Yet 200 is not enough. What about targeting numbers like 500, 1000, 2000, and more? But then that's the irony of the entire story. 200 episodes, and the question is what next? The question is who are all who are listening to this? That won't affect this talk show from continuing on. There be a time when the curve will fall down. Well, why do we think about that right now? Why don't we enjoy this moment of reaching 200 episodes in just under 22 months? In fact, 22 months are completed today. There's another milestone that we will be reaching in just over 2 months of time, that is completing 2 years of this great talk show. And I want all of you there to celebrate with me the 2 years of this particular show. Now that's enough of a celebration. Now let's talk about something concrete. And since concrete subjects are far and few in number, we usually would go into the past and talk about events that have happened and what are the repercussions from that event, and one event which had a lot of repercussions for a lot of teams was the 2019 World Cup held last year. The semi-final loss still hurts a few individuals, and this is what one of the players said in an interview, that the semi-final loss still haunts the players. Which World Cup I am talking about? I am leaving this for my listeners to deduct. According to me, the semi-final loss of the 2019 World Cup, the final loss of the 2003 World Cup, and the 2015 semi-final loss, despite its nature where it changed the definition of this sport, it brought about new players. A few players were given the boot. A couple of players never played again, and they may never do. But still, for me, these three performances, that is the finals of the 2003 World Cup, which we lost, the semi-final of the 2015 World Cup, which we lost, and the semi-final of the 2019 World Cup, which we unfortunately lost in circumstances beyond our control. According to me, these three performances are forgiven. Why are they forgiven? Let's start from the 2003 World Cup. Nobody expected India to reach the finals of the 2003 World Cup, let alone even go beyond the group stages. So yes, that was an exciting World Cup that brought about a refreshing change from the blunders of the tournaments before that. In fact, 2003 World Cup was the start of the team's revolution. Yes, which sport am I talking about? As I said, I leave it to the imagination of the listeners. Now, moving on to the 2003 World Cup, it was an unfortunate loss, but it wasn't taken to heart then because it was something unexpected. So, yes, whatever happened that day, it was unexpected. It happened in a moment of euphoria, a moment of greatness. Couple of veterans, a couple of newbies came together and took the team to the finals of the World Cup when we were expecting a few obvious teams to go through, like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, etc. But the moment India made it to that level, it was the first time in 20 years that they had reached the finals of a World Cup, especially in this particular sport. Moving on, the 2015 semi-final loss. Another bad day. The toss was lost. You had to chase over 340 runs and it didn't work out. So yes, it was a moment of bad luck and things didn't go according to plan on that day, but still, despite all that, it was very similar to the 2003 World Cup, and still that performance in this context is still forgiven. So yes, these two World Cups reaching the knockout stages, and now moving on to the latest World Cup, the 2019 World Cup, whose loss still haunts us according to a few players. Let's see what this player had to say. So, a player said that the heart-breaking World Cup semi-final loss to New Zealand after a near-perfect show in the group stages continues to haunt him and his teammates. In an interview, the player said that if he was given a chance to change the result of any one match in the past, it would be the 2019 World Cup semi-final. He said it has to be the World Cup semi-final. I think most of us are still not over that loss. It still haunts us sometimes. Well, according to me, don't let it haunt you. According to me, the only sports expert in India, this performance is forgiven. This player said that if he was given a chance to change the result of any one match in the past, it would be the 2019 World Cup semi final. It has to be the World Cup semi final. I think most of us are still not over that loss. It still haunts us sometimes. I can't imagine what the senior players must have felt, but in a World Cup, it just becomes even harder knowing that we played so well in the entire tournament. I still wake up to the nightmare sometimes. Then the question comes, why talk about this sport and only the 2019 World Cup semi final loss? Why not look at other sports? For example, the 2018 World Cup of another sport. It's for the listeners to guess which sport am I talking about when India were knocked out in the league stages itself. The 2017 Champions Trophy final loss against Australia. Which sport? You guess it on your own. So many sports in which we've had heartbreaking moments, but why are they only focusing on this? Shows the obsession of this sport, which has made us deranged, that we cannot look beyond any other sport. But the media exploits this. The player who is giving his interview enjoys it. We don't know if it still haunts him. Most of the time, what is said on the print or in public domain is very different from what individuals think when they are alone or when they have other matters at hand. So, do I believe this player that this loss haunts him? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. But they had to come up with something dramatic. A dramatic interview would gauge the attention of every individual, and it did. And once again, this particular sport took the chunk of the pie, got the major portion. In fact, if you look at the newspapers which are being published in the contemporary times, 75% of the sports section is dominated by one sport, and we know which sport is this. And in a moment of truth, it's a matter of shame, as if the sports reporters or the sportcasters do not see any other sport which can be talked about. Then that's the reality, and there is no use going into details because we know the obsession over one sport is there. Because, as a couple of my colleagues said, there are world class players and world class performances in this sport. Well, I do not agree with that entirely. This is not the only sport in which there are world class players. We have just hyped them up to such an extent, and we cannot see beyond this particular sport. We are blinded by this sport. We have given these players divine like status. For me, I forgive this particular loss. Had we won the World Cup, it still wouldn't have made any difference. For me, performance is more important than winning world championships. You can win the world championship once, twice, but there's a lot more to it than just winning world championships. But now, after this disheartening semi final loss, let's talk about something even more interesting, something that people have been debating over the past 2 decades. Who is a better player? Whose knock will be a part of the archives. And now the question comes, is Kohli's 133 against Sri Lanka at Hobart better than Tendulkar's 143 against Australia in Sharjah in 1998? Well, let's discuss this. Which is the better one-day innings? Kohli's 133 against Sri Lanka in Hobart, Australia 2012, or Tendulkar's overhyped 143 against Australia in Sharjah, UAE in 1998? Does not seem like an easy question, does it? Well, it is as easy as a breeze. The answer is straightforward. Irrespective of whether it was 1998 or 2012, for me, Kohli's 133 will always be rated higher than Tendulkar's 143. Though most critics would disagree, but I am least bothered about them. The target against Australia was 280. The target against Australia was 280, easy enough, whether it is 1998 or 2012. But against Sri Lanka, the target was 320. That too had to be chased in less than 40 overs, a statistical impossibility. Now let's look at a few more loving statistics. Both Tendulkar and Kohli were around the same age, the former 24, the latter 25. If we look at the rest of the team in 1998, luckily India had Ganguly and Lakshman as fellow batters, but apart from these two and Tendulkar, the rest of the batting lineup was forgettable. So in 1998, only 3 out of the 7 batters had the technique and the talent to chase 280. But in 2012, there was Tendulkar, Gambhir, Sehwag, Raina, Dhoni, Kohli, Uthappa and Rohit. Even Jadeja and Ashwin gave confidence to the team compared to the substandard quality of batting post Ganguly, Lakshman and Tendulkar in 1998. Then there is the question of batting positions. Tendulkar scored 143 while opening, meaning that he had time, while Kohli, and remember this, while Kohli, since his debut, had always come in at number 3 or number 4 and still scored 133 of 98 balls against the quality of Malinga in Australia, where this happens once in a blue moon. And this overshadows Kohli as a much more accomplished batter than Tendulkar. Few individuals will harp on the fact that Tendulkar faced quality bowling opposition in McGrath, Fleming, Kasprovic, Vaughan, but I disagree. While McGrath and Vaughan could be called good bowlers, the others were always fillers and pro tem, while Kohli till date has faced the likes of Malinga, Amir, Rabada, Stark, Wagner, Southee, Bolt, Ngidi, Cummins, Rashid Khan, Nathan Lyon, James Anderson, Stuart Broad, and the list goes on and on. Then Tendulkar had to face quality bowling from only 2 out of the 10 teams, while for Kohli the number is 10 out of 10. Teams like Sri Lanka, New Zealand, South Africa had so and so bowling lineup then, but they are nothing compared to what Kohli has faced since his debut in 2008. Now let's move on to something more concrete. There is a strange craze of kids who grew up in the 90s and how they grew up on a diet of low quality TV with the worst of CGI like Shaktiman with a horrendous script. The 90s fascination also includes the same generation growing up watching Tendulkar, who became popular because he was more often than not the lone survivor, the lone warrior. But isn't this craze with the 90s now a bit too much? Are we so parochial that we don't see anything beyond the period of the 90s and a bit of the 2000s? Reiterating that the 80s, the 90s were a simple generation is absolute hogwash and a misnomer. Are watching TV shows with boring content, inferior script, and hazy standard definition a thing to be proud of? According to me, no. In short, irrespective of the blind obsession of certain generations to certain generation, the hogwash of which generation was simpler, Kohli's 133 is, was, and forever will be a greater knock in any circumstance than Tendulkar's overhyped 143. A stadium packed to the rafters with limited and slow internet does not favor Tendulkar. Just because India was like a tortoise in internet and overall technological advancements all those years ago does not account for the simplicity of times. People can say what they want, that they grew up watching Tendulkar, Ganguly, Dravid. For some were fascinated by the likes of Gavaskar and the overhyped player in Kapil Dev. Those individuals were good and exploited the divine-like status that was given to them. That the times was simpler just because scheduling was different is no excuse. With only print and electronic media available then, not many knew about packed schedules and the media that was available. Neither did they highlight this because for them it was something novel. Neither did the players protest this because this was their only source of livelihood. Now they can protest because they have plan B, C, and D to supplement their existing livelihood. Lack of options in terms of expressing opinions for fanatics allowed commentators, a few pseudo experts, to create the aura around certain half wit players, even if they were average, and this greatly influenced the audience and spectators all those years ago. Now, every blockhead and average Joe who has access to the internet phones and an account on these bird brain sites can say whatever they want and not easily be influenced. Do you know that Tony Greig has had a huge role in making Tendulkar a larger than life character who manipulated the atmosphere to feign innocence? How do you feel about this particular article? Let me know through your feedback. Yes, I am also looking for feedback in the 22nd century because it's possible. But then that's the fun of having your own talk show, isn't it? You are the creator, the writer, the final individual through whom the script goes. And most of the time, not worried whether individuals will feel good or bad about a certain article. Enough of these boring sporting topics. Let's move on to something more interesting, something that we have loved, a term that has been created by our own accord over the past half a decade. What's this term? I have talked about this topic on numerous occasions, but let's talk about it once more. It's the startup business. For me, Facebook is as much as a startup as it is perceived to be a multinational company. And this talk show is as much as a multinational company as it can be categorized in the startup category. Now, an interesting article in a newspaper says that which vertical or which startup company or which might become a multinational company in the years to come will survive, and which of these startups or these future multinational companies, the MNCs, the KPMGs, will go further and earn a lot. According to this article, there are tough days ahead for domains like travel, those with linkages to US, Europe markets, B2B ventures as clients check spending, those selling non essential goods, and those companies with challenging unit economics. Now, there are some companies for whom there are big opportunities. It gets a green light. This includes organizations which deal in edutech, healthcare, cloud, AI, and business applications, the ones catering to essential daily needs, the last mile delivery firms, the cloud kitchens, the digital cable platforms, the social and the gaming platforms. Well, this article missed out on one key domain which will go up and up despite the nightmares of lockdowns, curfews, or any other such catastrophic event. And what domain is that? It's the talk show domain. It's the broadcasting, it's the speaking domain, the writing domain, one domain which will never be influenced by any event, whether you call it a health catastrophe, a financial catastrophe, or an overall human catastrophe. That's the fun of working in a domain which is immune to such things. Yes, there will be times when things may not work, but things will never fall apart, because not only does this domain entail technical skills, but it also increases one's communication skills, soft skills, and the basic domain of how to talk to individuals, how to make a particular episode exciting, how to keep going on and make sure that you complete not only 200 episodes, but one day go to that milestone of a rare milestone of 1,000 episodes. And in my knowledge, only the WWE has completed over a quarter of a century in the entertainment business, in the sports entertainment business, and now this domain is going to pick up. This is also nothing less than an entertaining business. Can the verticals like talk shows survive in the most enduring of times? Well, this is the only vertical or the only domain or the only broadcasting entity which can survive in any times. And I can tell you, even this talk show can survive for years to come. And this talk show will one day complete 1,000 episodes.
Yes, I think he might have enjoyed that. His mate certainly did.
I hope you enjoyed episode number 200 on the 27th of April 2020. Stay tuned for the next episode.
This is Saurabh, and you're listening to my favorite talk show, The Weekly Show with Aditya.